Welcome back aboard Arabella. I'm usually a little more behind the scenes when I start these out, just a voiceover, but I'm bringing myself, my full self, and my bicycle to you today to tell you that I am participating in this year's Pan Mast Challenge. That's a huge charity bike event here in Massachusetts that raises a ton of money for Dana-Farber Cancer Institute and their help to fight and cure cancer. 100% of the funds raised go to their important work, and I was thinking that some of you out there might want to help out, so I'm here asking for your support. If you'd like to support the ride, the link is in the video description below, and if I have anything to say about it, probably somewhere on the screen here. And now we'll just carry on with the video. This week, Steve gets back to getting to work on Arabella, getting ready for a big push toward Canada. He's got more information about that next week. I can't wait for you to know more about that. Yeah, there's a lot of boat work to come this week and the next to get ready for that. So stay tuned and enjoy the video.
We're on mooring in Marion. It's a really nice, calm morning, so it's perfect time to dive into this project. So we were looking at the bowsprit, and this is where that 45 bounced around and chewed things up a little bit. So you gotta fix that. And as you can see, we got our 65 pound here, and it's been crushing the spruce a bit. So we need to fix that. And even more so, I noticed a couple weeks ago that we've got some rot here. So it is time to very ruthlessly dig that out and see what's going on. This is very fast, very, very fast for rot to have developed. So I don't think this started after launch. I think this started before launch. And my guess is that there was something that had started in the wood a little bit, and then it got painted over. There's solid wood. That's solid wood. Okay. Wow. Woo, this is worse than I thought it was going to be. That's starting to feel solid again. There we go.
Wow. I can't believe it's that big. Are you surprised by that?
Yes and no.
Okay. Judging
by how rotten the center pocket here was, I figured it had traveled fairly far.
Okay.
But the bowsprit's a laminate, and one of the major perks of a laminate is the glue lines act as a rot stop.
Okay.
So there's like a perfect line on the bottom here.
Okay.
Where this bottom board, middle board, top board, it was this edge on the middle board.
Okay.
And the glue line stopped it from going into the board above it and stopped it from going into the board next to it.
Okay.
And it just kind of went in, but more than that, it went along its grain, which is what you would expect. So I'm to solid wood over here, except where some intruded around the bolt.
Sure.
And I'm pretty much to solid wood here. So I'm just gonna need to make like a 2x6.
Yeah.
12-to-1 tapered. I'll end up carving like all the way out to here.
Oh, wow.
And probably all the way up to here.
Okay.
Fit that in. And then I'm gonna put in oak cheeks to back up where these bolts go so that we stop getting the compression on that.
Awesome.
But yeah, this is not great, but it's not terrible.
Okay, well that's good.
When we selected the spruce, the best spruce went for the main mast, the next best spruce went for the booms, the next best spruce went for the gaffs, and the least best spruce became the bowsprit here. So it doesn't shock me too much that we had a little pocket of something in there that got started. And since I've noticed this, I've been keeping a real tight eye on the main and the mizzen mast, and I haven't found any soft spots in any of those or anywhere else in the bowsprit. It really just seems to be this little pocket. This kind of thing happens, but thankfully it's not terribly difficult to fix. And since this is already glued up and painted, when we're done, you'll never even know what happened.
You know what I particularly like about this whole situation? Is that you can do the repair and you can do the fix, and we're not out here stuck waiting for someone to come out and fix it, and we don't need to hire someone, and you're very handy to have around.
It's true. And thanks to Total Boat, the epoxy and the paint are going to be on the house, so this fix is literally going to cost a couple hours of time. Not a big deal. I am so happy for this knob on my little plane right now. I am so terrified of dropping my tools in the water. I have like a chance they're gonna land in the tender, and I got a good chance we're never gonna see them again. And you can get these aftermarket knobs that screw right on. And I loved it for the build, and I'm loving it even more right now. I have the graving piece glued in here. It's not the best fit I've ever achieved, but I'm pretty happy with it considering I was bouncing around in a tender while the boat was moving, trying to get the fit, and it is plenty tight enough for thickened epoxy. So that's all glued in there with some Total Boat Fixo Flex, which is their flexible thickened epoxy. And you might notice that this doesn't look like spruce. It's not. It's a piece of Douglas fir. I couldn't get to the spruce in Granby. It was too buried. But I could get to the bottom of Victoria's main mast, our mizzen mast now, which is Douglas fir. And I am totally comfortable gluing in a piece of Douglas fir into the spruce this far back in the bowsprit where it is this big and chunky. I don't think that's going to cause any problems whatsoever. If I were doing a pretty big repair way forward where it's smaller, I might be a little concerned in the property differences between the spruce and the fir. But back here, not worried at all. They'll glue together just fine. I don't think it'll cause any issues. I'm so amazed I haven't gone swimming doing this. Sometimes the boat goes one way and you get caught underneath the wire, and this would be significantly easier off some staging on the hard, but it's not really worth spending the time and money hauling out to do this. And if this were on a workbench, oh man, I'd be done already. Definitely is a little more challenging doing repairs and work on the water. It is time to start replacing this Dyneema, and not because anything's wrong with it. It hasn't degraded by any real measure by UV. Chafe has not been a problem, but it is creepy stuff, and that is the issue. And that's why this forward hin is all nice and loose, and that's why our forestay is loose, and that's why the head sail is loose, and that's why we keep having to tighten the rig up. It's because this stuff just keeps slowly creeping. When we launched Arabella, we used some nylon line, this exact stuff, to lace the dead eyes with, and it was never meant to be permanent. It's what we had on hand. Nylon, depending on how it's constructed and woven, it can be somewhat to very elastic, so like a bungee cord, it'll stretch. And if you put a bunch of tension on it, it'll stretch and elongate. And it was just too stretchy, too bouncy, and we couldn't really get and keep the rig as tight as we wanted with it. So the next logical step was to go to Dyneema. And I was under the impression that for an application like this, Dyneema is Dyneema. I mean, there's some differences in it for sure, but I didn't think any of the differences were enough to make any difference in our application, and I was wrong. So we are now switching out this Amsteel blue Dyneema for this New England Ropes heat set Dyneema. Chemically, it's the same Dyneema. Weave, it's the same Dyneema. The difference is this heat set Dyneema has been put under a whole bunch of tension and heated up above 200 degrees Fahrenheit. And what happens when you do that is all of the molecules align and become a nice cohesive unit, and the creep is reduced. So Dyneema doesn't really stretch much. So if you were to put this under tension, you wouldn't immediately notice it getting longer like you would with nylon. If you put a hard, sharp load on it, it doesn't bounce back. There's not much of elasticity like you have in nylon. But what Dyneema does do is creep. So if you put it under a whole bunch of tension and come back, it's gonna loosen up and it's just continuing to settle in. And heat setting takes that process basically and makes it happen to a higher degree and very quickly. So if we were to leave this Amsteel on the dead eyes and sail it for, I don't know how much longer, eventually we're gonna lose the creep, and that creep's gonna become less and less and less as this Dyneema settles in under those loads. Heat set just takes care of that. So we should see significantly less creep on this. It should not elongate nearly as much, which should allow us to get the rig tight and for it to stay tight. So let's go get this stuff switched out for the third time. But this time I know how to splice, so we can do a nicer job. Every time we do it, it's an improvement. I'm gonna start here because this is our greatest distance between dead eyes. I just went and checked them all. And so if we make the lacing long enough for this, it will certainly be long enough for all the others, which are just a couple inches shorter. Heat set Dyneema is significantly more expensive than regular Dyneema. So I took some measurements and bought what I thought I needed, plus a little bit extra. I ended up getting 120 feet total. And I think with taxes and shipping, that was like a little over $400. It's not cheap stuff. All right. So we're gonna do 1.5 fids. That'll form our eye. So going through and cutting all our lengths. Dyneema is super tough on scissors. It's really hard to cut and it dulls them very quickly. It won't last long. So if you're doing a lot of it, they make carbide scissors. But I've honestly found that the heat gun cuts through it pretty quickly and easily. It doesn't melt like nylon, but it cuts through fairly efficiently. Last one. And then the real work begins, getting everything tight. When we installed these, I had yet to learn how to splice Dyneema, so we just tied a figure 8 follow through, which we use in climbing, which is a very secure knot. And it's become what we would call welded. So I could spend the time and energy and pick it apart, but I have so much of this Dyneema now to play with for soft shackles and whatnot that it's really not worth my time trying to undo that knot just to Save a foot when we have 10 of these. All right, so here's our run of the new heat set. And over the end that doesn't get spliced, I'll put a piece of adhesive lined heat shrink tubing. And that'll keep that from fraying and keep it nice and neat. We'll do our splice. Stuff is so easy to splice. So these first steps here are creating the lock. So one end goes through, it can slide, doesn't really matter which end. And now you switch ends. This is kind of a pain when you're doing a really, really long one. Get that tucked in. And there's a little hook that catches it, keeps it from sliding back and out. Snip it up. And then we're going to go through the other one. Trying to split the bundles. I don't want to come through a strand. I want to come between the strands. Sorry, that's all swinging around. All right, so there is our lock. So you can see basically right goes through left, left goes through right. And when you take that loop out, it creates the lock. Now that can't open. And now the next step is we're going to bury the tail. So I'm going to come down a little bit farther than the tail. I'm going to switch to a different splicing tool. And we're just going to run this up the center. And we're going to pop out right by our splice. This, I think, is the hardest part. Peel that apart, sucker in. And just disappear it. Now we don't want this to create a big fat bulge, so we're going to taper it. Slide that cover up. I like to pinch it in the vise if I'm down below, or use a pair of vise grips and hold it back. And we're just going to pull out some strands, alternating right and left. And we're just going to fray out the end. And we're going to come back and nip all these off. There you go. So that's what we're looking for. You can see how that just tapers and gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So that's not going to leave a bulge or a sharp transition. All right, and we lace. So we're gonna have to hook these up to a halyard and haul them real nice and tight and get everything tweaked and adjusted, but for now, we'll leave them snug. It's more than enough support for the mast as long as we're not going sailing or getting all tossed around, which I don't think that's gonna happen in this harbor. This is pretty cozy in here.
We are very cozy in here.
So I'm not worried. That's awesome, those are all switched out. And this stuff should really not stretch at all. Should really make a big difference with keeping the rig tight. And there's a big reason, a new reason, that we need to help keep the rig tight. So let me go show you something fun. So this bad boy is, in modern terms, you would call it, I think, a code 0. Much, much, much thinner and lighter than what our mainsails are, and it is much, much, much bigger. So this will go inside of the jib, and it'll go from the tip of the bowsprit up to the mast just under the jib. And our jib, the foot is really tall, so it comes up to where the sheet attaches, and then it goes up. So it makes this kind of like triangle, and it's up here in space somewhere. This one, the foot of the sail, is going to be just a little bit above the deck, and it's going to come all the way after the solar panels. So we're going to have to lead these sheets outside of the shrouds. So this thing is, I don't know what the math, but easily 3 times the size of our normal jib. And this should make a gargantuan difference in sailing light airs. But if we're going to do this, we need to have it inside the jib. And we need to make sure that the jib is nice and tight, because if the jib is sagging at all, it's going to impede with this sail. So I'm going to make sure that that's snug. And when this sail is set, we're essentially going to have 3 wires up forward, all pulling forward on the mainmast, which is going to want to induce even more sag into it. So it's going to be really imperative that these aft 2 on port and starboard for the main are really tight and are not stretching or moving, so that they can carry those loads. The boat, the hull, everything is more than capable of carrying those loads. So it's really just getting this rig to stay nice and tight. New sails mean new lines. So we're on our way to rigging only in Fairhaven. And Dan has been just awesome to work with over the years. He's the one that made the wires and get that set up for our jib and our staysail. And I just got the lines from him to control the new sail from Robbie, the code 0, I guess you could call it. And we also got the new fitting from him for the jib pole that I got from Ed when we were back here before we headed south late that fall in the winter. So we've been working with Dan at Rigging Only for a few years now, and he's been nothing but a joy. So if you are in the area and you need any rigging work, give him a call. Anybody home?
Yes, sir. Hey,
How we doing?
hey, my man. Good to see you. All right. Okay, well, here it is. Right here.
All right. Perfect.
Okay.
So
I do have a box of scrap line if you guys need a line, or do you have too much line?
yeah, what do you got for scrap? I'll
It's
take a look.
I just, I make things out of them, but I just like to give it away to people who can use it, Help yourself.
So this is going to be for the taco sail, the very front downward corner. I believe I have that right. And this is fancy line, so it's Vectran inside with a nylon core. So the stuff shouldn't stretch, which is what we need. And it can be really skinny because it's so stupidly strong. And then this bad man pajama will be for the sheets. This is just normal nylon double braid.
It's a big one, man.
That was a big one. Perfect.
Cool.
Today is a beautiful day to work on the bowsprit. We have a very light breeze coming in off the island. There's no sea state. Everything's nice and calm. It's sunny and warm, but not too hot. Good gluing temperatures. And when I was in Granby, I grabbed a couple hole saws. So these are super close to the same size, and it works out pretty well that if we use the smaller hole saw to create kind of a ring that we can route out in the bowsprit for this plug. The larger hole saw one fits inside it very, very nicely. If you were gonna bright finish it, you might want something a little bit tighter, but since we're gonna glue it with epoxy and it's gonna be painted over, it is plenty close enough. So I cut out 4 little rings here of live oak, and these are gonna become the pads that the washers and nuts sit on. And I chose live oak because I had some thin offcuts kicking around in Granby. It's really hard, it's really dense, and the grain is all interlocked. You can see how swirly and crazy the pattern is on it. So they don't like to break. If you made them out of a very straight grained hardwood, they might split along the grain. So hopefully they stop crushing the spruce. They are not gonna be able to crush these. That is for sure.
While Steve succeeded in getting the live oak glued into place and getting it all painted again, the sea state made it hard to get the last of it filmed. But the boat work continues next week. Steve makes some big changes to the nav station, the rig gets tightened, and the boat gets ready to continue north into Canada. And again, if you'd like to donate to support my ride and raise money to fight cancer, just follow the link that's on the screen and in the video description below. We'll see you again right here next Friday.
Perfect. Hello! Thank you! I don't know if you can hear him, but he's telling his buddy that I built the boat out in Granby, Massachusetts. It's always fun.
I love that.